Well, welcome. We are excited to give you something new, presenting Drafting Buddies, a NASCAR commentary show. And welcome. We are excited to share with you something new here on Spin Move iRacing Network, and that's going to be David and myself talking real life NASCAR with you. Uh, this is a segment that we hope is a little more relaxed than what you're used to on the channel, where two friends just sit down and talk about NASCAR. So, David, what are your thoughts here for drafting buddies?
Excited to get into it. It's been a while since the NASCAR season has been here. And as we've mentioned within our other shows, the pre race and post race shows, NASCAR has a whole next gen car. So, a lot more things to go over within this season, and especially starting out with Daytona coming up on Sunday here. There's plenty of changes, and all the way up until race time, by the looks of it, we've seen at least some minor tweaks to the rules and things. So excited to get into all those. Excited to talk about our favorite drivers and just really have those great conversations that we always seem to find ourselves having as the race times roll around.
Yeah, so Drafting Buddies is going to be a commentary show with David and myself, and there's a couple more spots here on the screen for other Goodyear tires. So maybe we'll bring in other people as this show grows, but we'll see. But this is definitely more of a relaxed atmosphere. You see down below us here is the Daytona 500 race preview, and that's just really for us to make sure we cover what we want to cover. But if you are interested in just hanging out and having two friends talk about NASCAR, then this is your place. And man, I'm really pumped. The new season's here, the new car's here, so really excited for what's on the horizon from these guys. And let's talk about some racing that's already happened. The duels have taken place, and I know you didn't get the chance to watch, but I most certainly did. And Duel 2 had a lot more action than Duel 1, and the result was still pretty much the same. RFK, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, swept both duels. That's really impressive with Brad and Chris Buescher winning. Um, and also, we got to see classic Joey Logano doing Joey Logano things, blocking at the end. What are your thoughts from RFK sweeping these duels?
I think it is very interesting. I took a look at the practice results and things, and like I alluded to earlier, there was changes from that first practice session. NASCAR saw some of the cars head out on track with a large amount of skew. Not 100% sure if RFK had some of those skewed cars out there, with the back end really just kind of out to the right hand side, helping those cars get into the corner. But NASCAR immediately adjusted that, put out a new rule set, and if they were to make this change in any other way than they did, I think I would have had a problem with it. But NASCAR officials gave teams extra time in the garage to go in and then make these changes. What I'm really looking forward to from a fan standpoint when NASCAR does this is get the fan reaction of what these changes are going to do to the car. I would love nothing more than to see these cars go as hard as they can, as fast as they can on these tracks. I'm not saying get rid of the restrictor plate, but these rule sets lend themselves to slowing the cars down some in a couple of different ways. And I know NASCAR wants to keep this close, tight pack racing, but at tracks especially like Daytona and Talladega, I think the pack racing is lended to itself more for the fact that drivers want that drafting support than overall altering the car. For RFK, these guys, as Roush Fenway, have had a team for a while. They know what they're doing. With Brad Keselowski now being part of that owner driver collaboration, there might have been a few tweaks here or there, but I expect them to have a great season, as Roush Fenway has been known to have in the past, and possibly get back up into those championship standings and maybe run for a championship this year.
Yeah, I think with the new car, it definitely evens the playing field, and for a long time, these drivers have been clamoring for, we want the control back in the driver's hands. I think Chris Buescher is like a really talented race car driver. It's just he's been stuck in Roush equipment for a long time, and Roush really hasn't been good for a long time. And I think you're onto something there with Brad Keselowski really changing the culture there, and coming in, total new rebrand. Everything looks different now, and that whole team's gaining a lot of confidence. I'm sure moving into this season, they're really quick. In fact, all the Fords are really quick. At the end of the third practice, we were talking about how nearly all these Fords look really really quick, and the top of the speed chart at the end of the third practice, and I think he was top at the end of the first practice, was defending Daytona 500 champion Michael McDowell. Uh, I, as a Christian, I have a bit of a soft spot for McDowell. He is one of the champions of the Christian faith in the garage, and of course he had a long partnership with K Love, which is a Christian radio station, and he raced, I think, in some capacity like 14 years, and never got a win until last year in the 500. And everybody kind of thought, it's a fluke. And here in the duels, he almost won the second duel because he did the same thing he wanted to do in the 500. He was in third, and he waited for Joey Logano to do Joey Logano things, and he almost snuck through it again, and he almost won the duel. So McDowell's always been that kind of guy that he sneaks up there towards the end, and he's always in contention for these super speedway races. Rick Ware Racing right now is going berserk on these plate tracks with Cody Ware, and David Reagan's filling in a seat for them, and David Reagan's a Daytona 500 champion. Like he's been quick in practice, and definitely some names up front that we're not used to seeing.
For sure. And I believe a name that I did see sneak in there watching a highlight video, Kaz Grala. So definitely some names that not used to seeing out here for the Daytona 500 that are going to make their appearance. But in other news, I saw that the newest member of the 2311 Racing, Mr. Kurt Busch, was out there doing some mentoring within the past few weeks with Bubba Wallace. So I believe it was at the Coliseum. Kurt and Bubba had gotten together and gone back, and Bubba was asking, "What do you do to, make sure you're so quick, and how do you ensure that you're getting the most out of all of our time that we can get on the track?" And Kurt took him immediately back to the trailers. I think it was after one of the practice sessions, and sat down with Bubba and just started watching footage. And from what Bubba was saying, that's something that he hadn't done before. So it was really just that veteran, pulling another driver in and just showing him, hey, what I'm looking for on this film is anything that we can improve so that come race day, we're 100% prepared. We know what we're doing, and we can fix all those little mistakes that really add up to big differences come race time, especially for something like a Daytona 500.
Yeah, and like the different team dynamics are going to be nuts. Like we already talked about RFK with Brad Keselowski coming in there and replacing Ryan Newman. I don't think, I liked Ryan Newman, but he he definitely was. He's always been a driver that's looked out for himself and not really a mentor. So to see Brad kind of mentor Busher, I think that'll be interesting. You have single team dynamics, right? With you talked about Kaz Grala. He's on the money team, like Floyd Mayweather's team. Who would have thought that that would have gotten into the 500? But sure enough, he did. And so he's by himself, but he's got some cup experience. And then, like a huge talking point during the offseason was can uh, Kurt Busch help Bubba Wallace? And bringing in that veteran, that was a strategic move by Denny Hamlin, I think, to go. Yeah, Bubba's still rough around the edges. He's got talent. I'm not a Bubba Wallace hater by any means. You know, um, there are some things that um, he's done in terms of his attitude that I don't really like. I'm more of a laid back kind of driver personality. That's why my favorite driver is Chase Elliott. So he's got the personality of a doorknob, and that's fine by me. And but really, like Bubba Wallace has shown a lot of potential out there on the track. It's just you needed somebody to hone that in. I think Kurt Busch is going to do a good job at that this year. I'm trying to think of like other team dynamics that are going to be interesting to watch. I know Penske, so Penske's got a different lineup with Austin Cindric, and he's now driving the two car, and then you have Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, who oddly enough like becomes one of the older guys on that team, and Harrison Burton's now he's racing for the Wood Brothers, but he's a Penske affiliate. So uh, there's there are a few teams out there that are going to be new, and the dynamics of the teams are going to be really interesting.
For sure. Affiliates are not one of the big things that I think teams are really looking to do, especially with the way that it seemed practices played out, is they're really sticking to those manufacturer camps this year.
Mm-hmm.
Fords back to back with Fords. There was Chevys back to back with Chevys, and there were exceptions here or there. Practice three, the Toyota of Bubba Wallace was up in seventh. The next Toyota on the list down, followed by the other Toyotas, were all the way down in 25th, I believe. And then the first Chevy to kind of step out of that running order was up in 10th. I can't remember who the driver was, but you go a few more positions back there, and there you see the rest of the Chevy crew kind of finding their set for practice three. So I think come race time, we're really going to see these drivers try to be around their similar manufacturers if they can't find a teammate. Um, but as the Daytona always lends itself to, this race is long and there's just so much variation within the field. We will see a bit of manufacturer and team mixing. So things to keep an eye on and things that I'm excited to watch to see how these cars really play well with each other, because we haven't gotten to see, you know, a Toyota with a Chevy or a Ford and
Yeah,
just the mixing of manufacturers yet with these practice sessions.
yeah, it's gonna be wild. Like the new gen cars in terms of how they draft, like it's definitely a new challenge for these guys. I've been watching quite a bit of practice, and a big commentary is like these drivers are more confident pushing each other in the corners than they are in the straightaways, and the reason is because the car is so sucked down to the ground in the corners and a little bit more stable, and then a little more flighty down the backstretch. It's definitely something that you're not used to seeing. And I watched in third practice a lot of the Hendrick guys. They were uh, trying to do tandem drafting and trying to do chain drafting, like four cars, like the back bumps and then the third bumps and second bumps. And that really wasn't super effective, and everybody's just kind of resolved to the fact that side drafting isn't as powerful as it used to be, and the line with the most cars is probably going to win. So it's definitely got an old school feel to it.
For sure, and I think that has a little bit of something to do with the overall horsepower and aero package that NASCAR put out for the Daytona 500. I believe the final version of that came down to a high horsepower, low downforce car, meaning that that spoiler is a little bit smaller. I'm not 100% sure if it's any shorter or any kind of different from the Gen 6 car. I obviously being a new gen car, there's plenty of difference in the vehicle itself, but as far as that spoiler goes, I don't know if it's shaped slightly differently or if the height makes as much of a difference as it really did with that Gen 6 car, because now we have the independent suspension and other things to help really force that back end down onto the track. As you mentioned, these cars sit so low and seem to really suck down to the track so well, at least what we've seen in practice so far.
Something interesting, you were talking about like new parts with the cars, but something that I'm going to look forward to in the 500, because it was an issue in the duels, was that uh, the rear diffuser, so that kind of like shovel scoop thing in the back of the car. I forget who it was. I think it was Joey Logano. He was getting bump drafted pretty early in the race, and there's like a pin or something that comes down and holds that thing up. Well, the pin broke, and the middle part of the diffuser was just kind of like bouncing, and not like bouncing against the pavement or anything, but it was like wobbling in the wind. And so those kind of part failures, if that happens with bump drafting, right, uh, that could lead to some pretty big issues, and the diffuser's like a huge part of the car. So, um, yeah, really interested to see how all that shakes up. Um, so obviously we can't talk about the 500 without talking about the big one. So, um, I think from what we've seen in the duels and in practice, uh, I don't know about you, but I'm expecting a kind of a tame race. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the train come out a little bit for the first couple stages. I think towards the end of the stages, people are going to get a little wild, but um, with the parts shortage and with drivers coming to the track with only one race car, uh, I don't really see people being super aggressive. Do you think the same, or have you? What have you seen during practice and stuff?
I don't think that the big one is going to come from a driver aggressiveness standpoint. As you mentioned earlier, with these new parts on the cars, there's plenty of things to go wrong, either mechanically or otherwise, with these vehicles. Uh, Watching the clash at the LA Coliseum,
Hmm.
we saw a few of those cars kind of take themselves out of contention because they had been overusing the gearbox all weekend by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So there are parts and pieces on this car that I don't think are fully understood yet, that teams may push just a little too far and find those breaking points early on in the season,
Mm.
and potentially what happens when that's on the backstretch
Mm.
or coming through the tri-oval and there's no chance to make it to pit road quickly. You have a 2.5 mile course. As you mentioned, the rear diffuser on Joey Logano's car dropped down. What happens when that falls off and starts tumbling back through the field? I think that's where chaos is going to come from, rather than drivers being a little too aggressive and maybe causing the big one.
Oh man, what what a like a terrible, awful day for NASCAR if that were to happen. You know, they had a whole extra year to work on this car, and Uh, Joey Logano getting drafted from first, and his rear diffuser pops off the back end of his car. Oh gosh, that'd be awful. I think.
Or he throws a huge block again, you know?
Well,
It all comes down to crazy things.
yeah, I think really the car needs to stay together this week. You know, NASCAR's made this huge push to reach a new audience, and uh, man, that would stink if they debuted this new car and something off the new car causes a big issue. That'd be wild. Um, but we do know the big one's going to happen, right? Because it's Daytona, and we watched a little bit of the truck race last night, and you know they had their big one about 8 feet before the white flag was taken, so they had to red flag it and repair everything and get back to racing. So I think these Cup guys are going to be pretty tentative moving forward. Really, with the parts shortage, it's going to be very interesting for these first few weeks. So we here on Drafting Buddies want to at least pick throughout the year. Maybe we'll keep a tally. We'll see if we can outdo each other, but I think it would behoove us to keep track here versus keeping track with our pre and post race show stuff, because eventually, hopefully, we're going to be covering other leagues. So at least here we're consistent with one field. So David, Daytona is definitely a wild one. Uh, who are your picks? Let's do it how we normally do, right? So let's pick a main guy, and let's pick a dark horse for the 500.
So I have seen a little bit of the Hendrick team at least claiming that they feel very confident.
Mm,
And I'm going to go with Kyle Larson
mm.
as my main guy. You know, he was quick last year. They say they feel super confident this year. And although not normally somebody that I would think of when it comes down to these super speedways, he is starting out front, and I think that he has a good chance to stay up there and kind of maintain things. As we said, drivers maybe not being quite as aggressive due to having limited parts. And then as a dark horse, if we can still call him that, being that he is the defending 500 winner, I want to go with McDowell, you know? New car, he put up those great times, practice 1 and 3, and I think he can at least have a shot at defending his title.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. It's a really good pick. Um, it's in the spirit of being fair. I won't pick McDowell because my heart says pick McDowell as the main pick, right? Because he's so good at these plate tracks, and he's always up front at the end, and that's really what you want to see out of a guy. And like guys like him and David Reagan, and you know, they're gonna be definitely in the mix, right? Towards 10, 10 to go. They're always there. But for my main pick, let's see. I think I'm gonna go with a guy that. I really don't want to, but he has been kind of the modern day king at restrictor plate tracks, especially here at Daytona, and that's been Denny Hamlin. He has not shown. I don't think Toyota has really shown their hand quite yet. I think they've kept it close to the vest. Like I've watched the third practice, and they were really focusing on single car times and like 4 or 5 car pack times. I really think JGR has kept a lot close internally, and with Hamlin now having a new ally in Kurt Busch, right? So now he's not only got his teammates, but he's got the people who drive for him. I think those numbers are going to work for him, and he's already really good at Daytona. For my dark horse pick, I'm a sucker for good stories, and I think he showed me enough in the duel to be confident about this dark horse pick. As much as I hated Harrison Burton being whisked up to the Cup Series and taking over that Wood Brothers 21 machine, because I'm a big Matt DiBenedetto guy. Um, he was really strong in his duel, man, and he was right up front there at the end. I don't know if I haven't read anything. I don't know if he has to go to the back. He did. I mean, he was in the last accident with Joey Logano. Um, I don't know if they're going to repair that car or if they're bringing out a new one for him. But regardless, he raced a lot like Michael McDowell. He was very patient and was just there at the end in that front pack. I think I remember the commentators being like, they were super impressed with Harrison. They go, well, out of all the people up front, I think Harrison Burton's just happy to be here. I don't think he'll just settle with being happy to be there on Sunday, but my picks are Hamlin and Harrison Burton. That'd be wild to see a Trevor Bayne like story with Burton going back to victory lane with the Wood Brothers.
Very interesting. I sided with one of your teammates for your favorite driver, and then you siding with one of my favorite drivers' teammates. So interesting, and I'm looking forward to watching this all play out tomorrow night. What are your final thoughts, Zach?
I'm really going to be looking forward to uh, how the drivers manage their stuff because it's a brand new car and we are in a parts shortage. And Kyle Busch famously at the truck race last night, because he owns a bunch of trucks, he wore a T-shirt and it said the most expensive day of the year with a little cash emblem with wings on it, and he walked up and down pit road with the pockets of his jeans folded out, because that's what happens at Daytona. And I don't know if the Cup Series is really in a position to trash a bunch of cars. I know that ultimately this series is moving away from, right, we in the past they had chassis for road courses, they had chassis for mile and a halfs, and they had chassis for super speedways. Well, that's gone. Like, you can take this car and swap out the packages in terms of what NASCAR is deeming at these racetracks to be appropriate, but ultimately, like, the chassis you can take to next week, and that's what these drivers are really, and teams, I guess I should say, are really leaning on. So, I hope it's not a snooze fest. It very well might be because of how tentative these guys are going to be in the part shortage. What about you?
I think you put it perfectly. Did not know that Kyle wore the most expensive day of the year T-shirt, but that is great. Couldn't agree with him more. At least for the typical Daytona, you might be right. It tomorrow may be that snooze fest that we are talking about. Drivers may be getting some orders from team owners that we can't afford to wreck this chassis. We have to carry it forward to next week or beyond. So definitely some things that we're going to have to see and pay attention to some commentary, maybe some press releases coming from the teams talking about things that they're seeing. Definitely some news to come out over these last couple of hours before teams start really holding everything prior to race day. But hopefully we see some of that and get a little bit more insight right up to race time so that we have plenty to cover for a post-race review.
Cool. Uh, we are sitting at just about a half an hour, so um, this is the thing on the channel that I'm most looking forward to, and I know we've talked about that before, but I'm super excited to just talk about NASCAR with you, and just be able to share it with folks on YouTube. And we'll see where Drafting Buddies go. But in the meantime, we're really excited to be hosting this. This might wind up as a podcast eventually, but we'll see where it goes. And we'll be back to recap the Daytona 500. We hope you guys are as excited as we are to take a look at the Great American Race. So for my buddy David, my name is Zach, and we are just two guys that love to talk about NASCAR, and can't wait to talk with you about it down in the comments. And we'll talk to you guys again here real soon.